And well, let's speak to the Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, Zara Mohammed. Zara, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. Now, Henry listed some of the concerns there. In your view, what is your main concern?
So Muslim communities are very concerned right now about being unfairly targeted. What I should first say is that, of course, we all want to tackle extremism and we want a safe Britain. But what we feel Michael Gove and this government is doing is playing politics with extremism at the expense of certain communities. And this isn't illegal criminalising of groups, but this is a list that the government is going to be putting together to label who it deems to be extreme. Now, we've had reports that this is going to be impacting Muslim community groups and Palestinian advocacy groups, groups like ourselves. And the Muslim Council of Britain, which has been around for 26 years, has been actively working with faith communities to tackle inequalities, social mobility, fight back on COVID, elderly care. So it's really appalling and quite worrying for us that groups like us could also be on this list.
But you say appalling. Government ministers would argue that they've seen a rise in anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia. They've seen protests that at times they've called hateful. Shouldn't something be done? Is that playing politics?
The laws and policing are already there to tackle the issues where there is extremism and where there is hatred and incitement as such. What these new plans for the definition of extremism does is allow the government to choose and essentially cancel out community groups from public life. And the other point that I really wanted to add is, shouldn't the government be taking a look inward? And not to say that the Conservative Party is extreme, but from what we've heard in the last day alone, never mind the last 2 weeks, we've had the former Prime Minister, the former Home Secretary and the former Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, leading figures pushing out Islamophobic tropes and extreme speech, labelling the country to be ruled by Islamists, sharing platforms with convicted criminals, and the story around Diane Abbott, a top Tory funder, saying that she should be shot. Would these also be included in the definition? So all I can say is that communities are very concerned at this time as to how the government is going to apply this consistently and equally, given that it's not a legal definition, but one that they have arbitrary power to choose.
And Zara, of course, the government, including the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, have apologised for some of the comments that you've listed there, and they've acknowledged when they found that some of those comments have been racist. Having said that, if you believe this isn't the answer and that it carries too many risks around it, what would you propose is the solution to what has been recorded as a rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia since the attacks in Israel on October the 7th?
And that's such an important question. I would take us back to the words of the Archbishop of Canterbury and York, who said that this was very divisive and would unfairly target Muslim communities because it hasn't got any engagement. You know, who has the government consulted on this definition of extremism? And surely if you want to tackle things like Islamophobia, wouldn't you be engaging with Muslim communities rather than targeting them? So I think the government has a long way to go in doing meaningful consultation and really working out an approach that takes communities and Britain with it, keeping it cohesive and together rather than divisive.
All right, Zara Mohammed, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And right now on BBC Radio 5 Live, Chris Warburton is standing in for Nikki Campbell, asking, do we need a definition on extremism? You can take part in this, and right now on BBC Sounds. Well, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's look at some other stories making the news today. An anti-corruption hotline launched by the Metropolitan Police will be rolled out across all UK forces. People can call the hotline to report concerns about officers and volunteers. The initial scheme has seen more than 700 investigations into the conduct